So, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everybody. This is Santiago Pérez de Camino from the Vatican. It's 4 p.m. and we're going to start our second session regarding this webinar series we have organized in collaboration with the John Paul Foundation for Sport, entitled Sport Rethinking Tomorrow, about the future of sports after the pandemic. And I would like to thank you, all of you, for being here with us and to give two small suggestions or recommendations for today's session. As you can see, not like the first session last week, now we can see each other happily. But I would like to ask you to keep your microphones muted so we can hear clearly the speakers when they are talking. And also, as a suggestion, I suggest you to open your webcam, because in my humble opinion, I think it's very interesting for the speakers to be able to see you, to interact with you, even like if we were all together in presence. So I encourage you to activate your camera so the speakers can see who are you, and so that way they can interact better with you. And with this said, I would like to start asking also, I would like to thank our colleagues from Creative, which are in charge of all the logistics and technical issues for this webinar series. And I would like to ask them to show us the video of last week, so we can remember what we were talking about last week in our first webinar session. We're having some problems, just a moment. Good morning and good evening to everybody. Thank you, all of you, for being here for this first session of this webinar series about the future of sports after the pandemic, organized by the Dicastery for the Laity, Family and Life in cooperation with the John Paul II Foundation for Sport. And I would like to thank you, all of you, from all over the world.
Sports plays an important role in this respect and can be an example for other sectors of civil life because of its ability to create solidarity, its ability to create a sense of interdependence between people, and its ability to overcome barriers and include everyone. People of different races and cultures, or social and economic backgrounds, people with other concerns are excluded from opportunities which help them to access the world of sport.
One of the most important sport values is the education to the respect of the rules and the coexistence between people. playing with others, accepting the diversity. The family, the school are centrally the most important areas where individuals learn to be human beings. But sport, through its metaphor teaches, is in a natural and practical way. We must safeguard the educational aspect of sport and avoid that the parcel of even worse a long-term renunciation produces social aftermath. To put in danger the mantra, sport, teachers of life.
But surely for the church and people of faith is an opportunity to reflect that play is hugely important in our lives. Maybe this has told us when we've had play removed that maybe play is much more important psychologically and spiritually, not just physically. We know about the physical benefits, but what about the psychological and spiritual benefits of play? Maybe sport has been embarrassed about that.
It is our desire to promote a cross-cutting reflection on sport, which can bring together believers and non-believers, pooling different experiences and points of view of professionals and amateurs, of managers and athletes, of young people and adults, of the more advanced and the more disadvantaged countries. All these contributions are equally important to all of us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So this is a brief summary of what we experienced last week. I've been told that we had some problems for being able to activate the cameras, but now is already possible. So if, as I said, if you want, you can do it now. Now I would like to introduce our first speaker. He is a Jesuit priest, Father Patrick Kelly. He's a Jesuit priest, as I said, from the United States, and is currently scholar in residence at the University of Detroit Mercy in the United States. He was a standout athlete in high school and captain in an all-conference free safety on his college football team, American football, and one of the leading punt returners in the nation on second division. In addition to having a master's degree in theology from Harvard Divinity School and a licentiate in sacred theology from Western Jesuit School of Theology. Father Kelly, he studied with the prominent social scientist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and he has written several books related also always on sport issues from a theological and philosophical point of view. His first book was Catholic Perspectives on Sport from Medieval to Modern Times. And in addition to numerous academic articles and book chapters about sport, theology, and spirituality, he has edited the book Youth, Sport, and Spirituality, Catholic Perspectives from the University of Notre Dame Press in 2015. Other than that, this past semester, he has been teaching a course of Ignatian spirituality, theology, and sport at the Gregorian University in Rome until the pandemic arrived. And other than that, I'm happy and proud to say that he's a very good friend. He's frequent consultant of the Dicastery for the Laity, Family and Life on sport issues. And he's with us today to introduce our topic of this day entitled The Role of Sport for Life. So Father Kelly, whenever you want, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Santiago, and it's great to be with you again, as always. And also, it's wonderful to see familiar faces and friends. So I'm going to share my screen because I'm going to use a PowerPoint presentation here. And Santiago, if this isn't going well, please let me know in some way if you can't hear me or see the.
I'll do.
Okay. So Santiago has asked me to address coming out of the document that was written, came out of the dicastery, Giving the Best of Yourself, sort of basic questions. Why is the church, engaged in and paying attention to sport and this aspect of culture? So I'll be doing that and maybe providing a little bit of a context even for what's in that document itself. I just have a short amount of time. As Santiago said, I played sports throughout my life. They were kind of the joy of my life when I was growing up. I made a lot of friends in that context. When I got into college, when I was kind of finishing up playing football in college, I became more explicitly interested in my faith life, Catholic faith life. And in my 20s, I started to think that maybe I, like St. Paul, should put behind me the childish things of my youth and be about the spiritual life. But I discovered for myself that didn't work. And I think that's because I was so profoundly shaped by my participation in sport, for good and maybe for ill in some ways, and that human formation was influencing my attempts to live the Christian life in my 20s. When I came to do doctoral studies, I had a question, and that was, what would a Catholic approach to sport as an aspect of culture be? And at that time, maybe surprisingly, there hadn't been much written about that. And I wasn't persuaded by what I was reading in terms of the history of sport. There was a tendency for historians of sport to characterize Christian attitudes to the body, especially prior to the Reformation, as thoroughly negative, loathing the flesh, and to therefore say that this wasn't a context within which sport could have developed, or play or sport could have developed. But this actually couldn't account for what we know about the medieval period, especially the high and later medieval periods and early modern periods in Europe, because we know, especially due to social history, that lay Catholics were playing games and sports on the feast days and the holy days, which took up about a third of the year or more throughout these periods. These activities were also depicted in religious art of the time. So here's a stained glass window from the 14th century. Here's a carving of a ball game from the 14th century in Gloucester Cathedral as well in England. It's depicted in prayer books. Here's a prayer book from 1300 in France with depiction of people playing games, and on the right there's a woman acrobat and a musician. Sport, time for sport and play was also included in the humanist schools of the Renaissance and in the early Jesuit schools. The Jesuits, by the latter part of the 18th century, had 800 schools throughout Europe and other parts of the world, and all of them provided time and space for play and sport. So I ended up having a different question than had been asked up to that point, and that was, how is it that a religious culture emerged in these periods that seemed to so easily incorporate games and sport? And I think, generally speaking, historians of sport probably were not aware of Christian theology and its history, in that early and medieval theologians spent much of their time criticizing Gnostics and Manichaeans precisely because these groups regarded the material world and the body in themselves as associated with evil. So to do so, the Christian theologians appealed to fundamental Christian beliefs about the creation of the material world. And God saw that it was good, is the refrain. The incarnation, so the word becoming flesh, and the resurrection of the person, body and soul. Irenaeus here in his writings against the Gnostics says, Christians hope for the salvation of the whole person, that is, of soul and body. When Montaigne wrote in an essay on education, we are not bringing up a soul, we're not bringing up a body, we're bringing up a person. We must not split him into two. He's writing out of this longer tradition. This is also the reason he gives for including time and space for sport and play in the school day of the humanists. So another part of the way that such a religious culture emerged has to do with the understanding of the relationship between faith and cultures. And here, St. Paul, the apostle to the Gentiles, is crucial. Of course, he took the good news to non-Jewish peoples, and in particular to Greeks. The people of Corinth had sponsored the Isthmian Games every other year since 582 BC. And so in introducing them to Jesus, he uses sport as a reference point for dialogue, famously writing, "Do you not know that in a race the runners all compete, but only one receives the prize?" And then goes on to explain what the Christian life is about. So here we have a biblical precedent of openness to non-Jewish cultures and acceptance of and dialogue with their games and sports. That would influence Christianity in subsequent centuries. One consequence of opening to the Greeks is that Greek philosophy began to influence Christian ethical thinking. And they developed what I'd like to call a play ethic. And Thomas Aquinas is very important here. Whoops. I think Santiago, because someone's trying to enter, I can't go forward.
I don't know. I don't think that's the problem.
Well, all of a sudden I can't go forward.
Okay, can you try now?
Can't. How about can we stop share and I'll come back to it again?
Simone, puoi cancellare per favore lo schermo? Okay. Now try again, Father Kelly, please.
Okay. Good.
Sorry
So,
for this.
okay. So for Thomas Aquinas asked, believe it or not, in his Summa Theologica, can there be a virtue?
But try you share your screen again.
Me?
Yes.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so I was saying that one of the consequences of the opening to the Greeks was that Greek thought began to influence Christian thinking, and in terms of ethics, Thomas Aquinas follows the ancients and Aristotle in associating virtue with moderation. So when he asked the question, can there be a virtue about games, he answers yes, because a human being should not be spending all of his or her time working. This would be excessive. So he quotes Augustine in the front part here. Spare yourself at times, for it becomes a wise person sometimes to relax the high pressure of his attention to work. And how does that happen? It happens through playful activities. And so there can be a virtue about games. For Thomas, I think it's important to say that play is not only the pause that refreshes so that we can get back to work, that's really important. Rather, he says what we do in play, we do for its own sake. And he even viewed play as similar to contemplation because they're both enjoyable and we do them for their own sake. In response to the objection that virtuous acts should be directed to an end, which is Aristotle's view, Thomas says that the enjoyment that we experience in play is directed to the recreation and rest of the soul. For Thomas, then, play has its end in the human person being fully alive. It serves the human person. So Thomas's play ethic had a significant influence on preachers at this time and later. And the humanist and early Jesuit educators explicitly used this thinking to make the case that the students should have time for play and sport in the school day. It would be excessive to have them studying all the time. So these are some of the elements that are the basis for the approach, I would say, in much of Catholic thought, theology, and of the popes, and even in the document, giving the best of yourself. And here the elements are that it takes play and sport seriously in themselves, as an aspect of human experience and culture. And because the person is a unity of body, soul, spirit, mind, we would say, working in educational institutions, embodied activities like play and sport also impact us at the level of our thinking. So we can arrive at new insights into ourselves and the meaning of our lives in the context of playing. It affects us at the level of our mind, but also at the level of spirit. St. Paul calls small letter S spirit, human spirit, that makes us capable of relationship with Holy Spirit. So it also, because we're a unity, it affects us at that dimension as well. So it can serve, play and sport can serve the human person then in his or her integral development. Reflecting on the massive appeal of the World Cup in 1978, Cardinal Ratzinger at the time, subsequently Pope Benedict, says, "It seems to me that the fascination of football consists of the fact that it unites both aspects, play and the freedom associated with that, and a training for life in a very persuasive manner." He says, for example, in team play, the player learns to put his individuality in the service of the whole. Sport unites people in a common goal. The success and failure of each one lies in the success or failure of everyone. And then Pope Francis reminds us that sport also has a role to play in terms of what he calls the culture of encounter, and leading to the unity of the human family. So he said to the European Olympic Committee, sport must always go hand in hand with solidarity because sporting activity is called upon to radiate the most sublime values throughout society, especially the promotion of the unity of peoples, races, religions, and cultures, thus helping to overcome many divisions that our world still experiences today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Father Kelly. I think that it's very important to make an introduction such as this one because it's important to remember, to remind why the Church cares about sport. And as you said, I think it's interesting what St. Augustine said, that play is not opposed in our daily duties or in our life duties, but it's an objective, a goal in itself. And to know more about this, I would like to introduce our next speaker, which is Dian Castillejo Garcia. But before giving to her the floor, I would like to ask Simone to play a video that Dian Castillejo has sent us, so we can know more, a little bit more about her.
For the past 25 years, we have been together for many sports and action-filled adventures. We have an awesome view from up here. Last 5K, woo! You joined us in following the stories of your favorite athletes.
Play international talaga.
So nice to see my former teams be in the finals.
I'll try my best. I'll do my best to represent the country.
Hindi tayo nag-iwanan. Sama-sama nating inabot ang tagumpay.
Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng tumulong sa akin.
I don't put pressure on myself trying to bring a championship.
At sa mga susunod na taon, magkakasama pa rin tayo.
Ha? Kasama ako?
Sports ninyo? So kasama din kayo?
Skydiving?
Ha? Mag-gymnastics tayo?
Ah, gusto ko yan. Pwede. Pwede!
Magkakasama pa rin tayo to explore the lives of our athletes beyond sports.
Just having fun supporting the rest of the athletes.
Yeah, explosive!
Challenge our favorite idols sa Diane Fit and get to know the next generation of Pinoy superstar champions. This is Sports and You! Kasali ka rito!
So as you can see, Dian Castillejo Garcia, class 1965, is from the Philippines, and she's a former tennis player and sports reporter. Dian Castillejo represented the Philippines in the Federation Cup, the Fed Cup, for almost 10 years. And she also competed in the Asian Games, the South Asian Games, the Southeast Asian Games, Junior Wimbledon, and the Junior US Open. She was the first Filipino to earn a WTA women's ranking, and she also was the first Filipino to earn the Fed Commitment Award in 2017. Dian Castillejo is married, and she has a son who also plays as a tennis professional player, and he has won also a national group tournament in 2016. But let's hear from Dian Castillejo directly about his experience and what he has lived in his sports life, and he's still living, as we could see in this wonderful video. Dian, thank you very much for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening from Manila, the Philippines. Hello to everybody. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much, Santiago and Malu, for inviting me to share. And I wanted to clarify, my son, he's just 18 years old, so he's just playing in the ITF junior circuit. He has a junior ITF ranking. He's not a pro yet, but not yet. But he's working hard.
Sorry, my fault.
Anyway, yeah, so I wanted to share my beautiful experience in the world of sports in a nutshell. I believe that sports in every aspect of involvement is one of the greatest gifts that God has given us. And I am super thankful that I was born in a family of sports. My earliest recollections of my childhood have been my dad taking me and my three sisters and my brother to sports. He took us first to swimming lessons, and we played soccer. And then later on, I started my tennis, which later on became my career. My father, Lino Castillejo Jr., who's now 90 years old, turning 91 this December. I'm very happy about that. He was a sportsman all his life. He was track champion in his college here in the Philippines, De La Salle University. He held the record in the 100 meters for many decades, and he was also a member of the university football team, soccer for those of you in Europe, but here we call it football. And they won 3 NCAA titles. And later on, he also became a member of the Philippine national football team, where, as I think Santiago mentioned, that my father had played in the 1954 Asian Games. And after he retired, he actually became a manager of the Philippine football team. And then later on in his 40s, because he wasn't satisfied, like he didn't want to retire, he also started to compete as a race car driver. And I remember the days of going to all the football matches, watching the games, then watching my dad car racing in circuit and slalom, and us kids cheering for him. So you can imagine, from the age of 8 or 9, my siblings and I had 3 sisters and 1 brother. I was the middle child. We were already competing in some swim meets, and by 11, I had switched to tennis. My grade school days consisted of my dad waking us up before 6 in the morning to do road work, running, footwork drills. And after school, about 3 o'clock, my mom would pick us up from school, go straight to the club, train for 3 hours, go to the gym. My dad would come to the club to watch us practice after his work, and would take us home. I would do homework in the car and then continue to do homework at home, eat dinner, only to wake up the next day and do the same thing over again. I did that for years. By the grace of God, I won the 12 and under national championships. And after that, my life became more regimented, as I had to travel overseas to compete in age group tournaments. At age 14, I won the ladies national championships. And as you mentioned, Santiago, I competed in the Southeast Asian Games, the Asian Games, and also fulfilled one of my big dreams as a tennis player, which was to have qualified and play at Junior Wimbledon and Junior US Open at the age of 17 and 18, if I remember right. I played 2 years. So I remember how happy I was to represent the country, to wear the Philippine jacket everywhere I went. My parents, who I owe my sporting life to, did everything that they could to support us, to fund us, and all our trips. And it was not just me, it was me, my 3 sisters who were also traveling. And they instilled in us the lifestyle of working hard, training for tournaments, and striving for excellence. It wasn't easy, I have to admit, but I was quite determined. Tournaments abroad were tough, as a lot of times I had to travel alone, because sometimes the funding that we had could only support me and couldn't support me taking along a coach. So I would play ITF tournaments when I was a junior in around Asia, in Australia, in Europe, and also in the US. And I played the ITF junior circuit. And then at the age of 17, I started to play in the WTA circuit to try and reach my other goal, which was to gain a WTA world ranking. There was no Filipino who had done this in the past. It was super tough. I won some, but I lost a lot, and I had to really toughen myself. And a lot of times, since I was traveling by myself, I just had to like console myself and find a way to get back. But God didn't leave me totally alone. I was able to connect with other tennis players of all nationalities, and I was able to train with them abroad. I had to combine school and tennis, and finally in 1988 I reached my goal of earning a WTA ranking. My career high was only at about 220, not as high as I wanted, but I still gained a lot more. I earned a US college scholarship in Florida. I I developed character. I learned how to fight, to pick up the pieces when I lost, work harder, and try again. I gained a lot of friendships and experiences in almost all the countries that I traveled to. And I also became quite strong carrying my luggage around the train system in Europe. I think baggage carrying could have been my second career. Kidding aside, my tennis career really helped me for the next phase of my life, which was sports broadcasting. I had no formal education in this field, but just had the heart of an athlete, the desire for excellence, the determination to learn. And I became sports anchor for the lead broadcasting company in the Philippines, ABS-CBN. And the pressures of being an athlete really helped me cope with the pressure of live broadcasting, writing stories, meeting deadlines for all our news platforms. A few years into this, and I was also able to produce and host my own sports and fitness show. It was also an adventure show. You saw the trailer of that earlier. Thanks so much for playing that. And we were able to feature all kinds of athletes, different levels, and share the value that sports brought to people of all classes. Free education, a spot in the national team, a gold, or even just another medal in international competitions. And I'm very proud also that through the show, we were able to help some of our needy athletes by connecting them with our viewers who very eagerly wanted to support these athletes that we were featuring. I have also been very blessed to have been able to cover every fight of Manny Pacquiao for the last 20 years. I've been to every training camp, and I thoroughly enjoy reporting the wins of my fellow Filipinos. Of course, Manny won a lot. Uh, and it gave me so much pride and honor to report all the wins of my Filipino athletes. You're seeing some photos of me here with some of our Miss Universe winners, Pia Wurtzbach and Catriona Gray, because for some reason my company would send me not just for sports events, but also to cover the Miss Universe because of my Spanish heritage. I speak Spanish, and most of the contenders were always Latinas. I was able to interview them in Spanish. At the late age of 34, I got married. My husband was also a soccer player. We had a son, Matthew. And of course, the first thing I thought for him to do was what else? Get involved in sports. At the age of 4, he started swimming, football, tennis, and golf. I mentioned earlier today he competes in the ITF junior circuit. And I thank God that I've been able to help him and guide him through my own experiences. During this pandemic, I don't know how I could have survived without having the fighting spirit that sports has taught me. In the Philippines, our lockdown was very severe. We couldn't go out of our houses for months. We weren't even allowed to exercise outside. But thank God I was able to run at home in a treadmill, skip rope, do weights, and able to basically get my mind still thinking positive. It seems that sports halted life, and I sincerely feel that sports is one of the best tools and gifts that God has given us to strengthen not just our bodies, but more so our mind and our heart. When we feel like we are at the end of our ropes, we are programmed to dig deep, fight, push, and we suffer setbacks like we did. In my case, our station was not given a new franchise by our government, and our company had to retrench more than 8,000 employees. And a lot of our shows got canceled, including mine, after 25 years of airing. But God, through the training of sports, teaches us that there is hope and we don't give up. It's a very well-known verse that tells us with God, all things are possible. And today it's actually a very special day for me because today I embark to continue my show that was canceled on Facebook. And I think that it is providential that it is also the day that I share with all of you uh, how we can all continue to live and fight and pursue our God-given dreams with the training of sports. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I want to give all the glory and thanks to God. Thanks, Santiago.
Thank you very much, Diane, for your testimony. I would say that you have sport in your blood and in your genes because of your father. Now you married to an athlete as well. Your son is almost a professional tennis player as well. So it runs on your blood. And I like what you said about the strength and how sport has been a role, a model for you in your life, and how has taught you to the resilience, the strength to pass over many different situations that sometimes even to be alone, far from your family, it's often not easy. So maybe this could be an opportunity also to introduce our next speaker, because he will go into the deep of the document, that the first Vatican document published on sports, giving the best of yourself, and about the values that the church and sport shares commonly. He is Wolfgang Baumann. Wolfgang Baumann he's from Germany. He's graduated in sports economy, sports science, and English literature in the universities of Bonn, Beirut, and Stirling in Scotland. He is the General Secretary of TAFISA, which is the Association for International Sport for All. He is the former executive director of the German Sport Federation and the sport marketing agency, the Deutsche Sportpartner GmbH. He has different international positions, including a membership of the Sport and Active Society Commission of the International Olympic Committee, and he has been elected vice president of the International Council of Sports Sciences and Physical Education. And in 2015, he was appointed also member of the high-level advisory group of the European Union Sport Commissioner. He is married and he has 3 daughters, and he is here to talk about us the document, Giving the Best of Yourself, and as I said, sport as a role, the role of sport for life. So Wolfgang, Dankeschön, thank you very much for being with us, and whenever you want, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Santiago, for the warm words of welcome. Very much appreciated. Also from my side, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, honored participants, colleagues, and friends from all ends of the world following today's webinar. Of course, I'm also thankful to our hosts for arranging all of this. I'm German and I'm connected from Frankfurt, from the TAFISA office. And of course, it's my great pleasure to be with you for this hopefully enlightening webinar organized by the Vatican. Once again, I'd like to thank the organizers for having me attending, and I can only congratulate our host for launching this very significant series of webinars under the theme Sport Rethinking Tomorrow. I was actually asked by the organizer to explore on the topic Giving the Best of Yourself, Sport as a Role for Life, which I will do from my particular perspective and experience and organization TAFISA, which, as Santiago already explained, stands for the Association for International Sport for All. To start with, I would like to just let you know, doesn't continue. I would like to work myself along these issues: introductions, the challenges, new solidarity, change of paradigm, church as a key protagonist, conclusions. And of course, I will do this on the background of my organization. Just 1 or 2 little charts on the background of TAFISA. TAFISA indeed is a leading international sport for all organization with nearly 300 member organizations from 170 countries. We are closely linked with other international organizations and institutions like the IOC, UNESCO, WHO, the EU. And we are working with our regional bodies. Our vision is a better world through sport for all. Our mission to lead the global sport for all movement. And some of our basic values refer to inclusion, of course. It's our ultimate aim to really make everybody participate in this global concept of sport for all and physical activity. We are about to help our organizations to move forward, to progress. We would like to empower them. And last but not least, of course, one of our major issue is indeed in our field of sport for all to bring the world together and connect various organizations from different parts of the world, since we are working in a field with not so big budgets available. And that's one of our main issues, is to connect and learn from each other, and just to avoid to reinvent the wheel all over again. To start with, I would like to have a little bit of a comment on the development of sports under the term of globalization in sports. Looking back over the last 100 years, we can see that sports have grown into one of the most prominent cultural phenomena. Now, as a mainstream of social life, it developed into a significant segment of today's world. Sport, as you are all aware, is providing modern heroes and devils, lunch break topics, travel motives, business booms, professional careers, national identities, and theaters of mass entertainment. This has become the norm, an integrated segment of daily life. It influences how we spend our money, select our idols, use our time, enjoy public triumph, and endure public despair. In conclusion, for many people across the world, sports, and in particular football, has even become their new religion. And the football stadiums are the new cathedrals they are pilgriming to. But this is another story that we cannot deal with today. Modern sports, in a way, together with the world exhibitions of the outgoing 19th century, was one of the first carriers of globalization. Its concept and organization spread throughout most of the world countries at a rate never seen before. Modern sport was the first form of culture that had the same appearance, principles, rules, terms, and fashioned around the world long before global entertainment, tourism, or information technologies. Here, for the first time ever, the world has been conceived as one. Only half a century later, a new wave in the development of modern sport began to take shape. From the second half of the 20th century, sport grew further along an additional and globally extending branch, which is today referred to as sport for all. The three words sport for all stand for a vision that portrays an ideal condition in the future. Certainly, a vision is a synonym of hope, not of reality. But a vision may develop a dynamic drive if it is nourished by human hope and action. In our case, the growing participation of all kinds of people under all kinds of circumstances and in all kinds of activities being understood and shaped as sport for all. Sport for all, which started as an idea without any prestige and publicity, has made remarkable progress. And the term as right to citizenship for the first time was formulated in the resolution of the Council of Europe 1962. But I was also very happy to see that Pope Francis was commenting to a certain degree on this issue again and as well, when he was saying everyone gets to play not just the best with the advantages and limitations each has, focusing on the disadvantaged as Jesus did. In this way, becomes an authentic service to the growth of the community. Now the question, of course, is, can sport for all be part of the solutions the world is in need right now and looking for? As a matter of fact, our people and our world right now are facing challenges and threats on a diverse scale never seen before. From climate change to civil unrest, non-communicable diseases, isolation, oppression, poverty, terrorism, and the threat of nuclear war. Just have a look at the chart that gives a not exhaustive but alarming list of contemporary and future challenges. Terrorism, unequal opportunities of men and women, a lack of access to education at all stages of life, and so on and so on. Finally, unfair distribution of resources and wealth. And now, this is all overshadowed by the challenge number one, which is about fighting COVID-19. This is not a problem unique to any one demographic, geography, belief system, or political status. This is a problem that right now faced by all of us, our friends, our neighbors, our families, and in particular our children. Without immediate and effective change, generations to come will not enjoy the world as we have done ourselves. But of course, the question is, with this challenge of COVID-19, what is going to happen with those challenges that are also all around? I would like to explain to you my issue, just showing you this chart, which reflects on the global trend that we are right now in. A global trend that can also be described as a race that is slowing down. We have done a great comprehensive work all together with our partner Nike to find out what is the situation of physical activity status all over the world in all the various countries. And I can let you know that there are no differences between continents, between countries that are developing and countries that are developed. The issue is all the same. The drama is just the same all over the world. And these, we have just selected only 5 countries out of many that give you this slow down direction when it comes to the percentage of population in a given country practicing sport for all and physical activity. It's a very negative result. And of course, this is a huge job to do to work against this trend. However, I don't know whether you feel the same. These statistics do not mean a lot to the individual. And for that reason, just to give you the full picture of what I'm talking about, I would like to translate this negative trend into the language of children. So in connection with our research work, we came up with this chart that we called or are calling a deadly cycle. And this gives you the process in the life of a kid that is not active. And we see that this starts to shape very early in a kid's life. You can see that a kid that is inactive is likely to be 30% obese. It will score less on tests at school. It will be significantly more likely to be held back in school. As they transition to the workplace, they will have a much lower productivity level. They will cost their employer more. They will have more sick days. And then, of course, as an individual, really became a drain on the economy. And the troubling thing is that we see this research pointing us towards the notion the behavior is passed, and this is now very important, from one generation to the other. This is to say that kids with 2 inactive parents are 6 times more likely to be inactive. And the most terrible message coming out of this dead circle basically at the end is we have to understand if we do not manage to turn this deadly cycle around, our children might live 5 years less as their parents. And I think this is something that is really hitting on our nerves, and we have to try very hard to give our kids those 4 years, 5 years back. Of course, we can also see that this trend is even worsened right now. We have just received the most current information and research results from Slovenia, a country that is very close to us. And what they have been doing for the last 30 years or so, a regular test, a survey, always in springtime of a year amongst 20,000 pupils. And in a nutshell, what they have found out, even though there was only a lockdown of 3 months so far in Slovenia, it has already negatively affected the physical efficiency of children. This, of course, is a drama again, and it will be probably the same in all countries all over the world that are suffering from the same effect of lockdown. So we have a huge challenge ahead of us, since we are also aware that it is. Can I just stop this? Sorry, just give me 1 second. It has started.
Okay, no, it's the slide. So it is.
Next one.
Yeah. It doesn't stick. Sorry.
Sorry, this is a little bit of an unforeseen situation, but now apparently it works again. So first of all, what I wanted to explain, of course, is that we can turn around this negative trend, but we have to start as soon as possible. And of course, this is in particular also focusing on the role of parents. And what is also not so visible and known all over the world, in particular also amongst educators, parents, teachers, and so on, all these various benefits that are inherent in an active life, in physical activity and sport for all. And we have called this chart the human capital model, and it gives you in a very holistic perspective all the various positives and benefits that physical activity is working with, and all these various positives, of course, can be part of a person's life and contribute to the well-being. And here we have distinguished between emotional capital, physical capital, social capital, and so on. And each of these capitals, of course, can mean a lot to our work if we focus on the one or the other. So to be short, it is time to take action. And of course, we do have to do this in a rather systematic way. And first of all, this implies that we have to share. As I said before, we have to find a way to share and to let other organizations and institutions know what has been successful in one school, community, or country or church should be also be available to others. Once again, there is no need for duplicating good work that we are doing. We just have to identify and then share with others. We have to support, in particular, those countries that have something to say. So the question is not, first of all, what is in it for us, but what can we do for others? So we need this sort of spirit of sharing our good knowledge just to make sure that others can benefit and do likewise a good job. And last but not least, it's time for action. Time for talk is over. We have to move forward and we have to act with integrity. Of course, and we are all aware, and I think this is also about our webinar today, this whole situation, this challenge that is ahead of us, no organization, no player can solve or fix alone. We have to work together. And this is true of the educational field, the workplace, the governments, the healthcare system, the sitting setting. And I also truly believe that there is an important role the church can take over. And I was so happy to read the new encyclical Fratelli Tutti that Pope Francis only a couple of days ago has announced and published, since he's also talking about, this is at least my humble interpretation, about a new solidarity. When he's saying each day offers us a new opportunity, a new possibility, we should not expect everything from those who govern us, for that would be childish. We have the space we need for co-responsibility in creating and putting into place new processes and changes. Let us take an active part in renewing and supporting our troubled societies. This is actually what we are all heading for, working together, but in an understanding and spirit of a new solidarity, which is on its way. We have started bringing together various partners and partnerships to make this working and moving forward. When I was asked to give a presentation on giving the best of yourself, Of course, the understanding is when a person gives his or her very best, he or she experiences satisfaction and the joy of accomplishment. The same is true in human life in general and in living out the Christian faith. We all want to be able to say one day with St. Paul, I have fought to the end, the good fight, finished my course, I have kept my faith. Thus, it is obvious that sport can be used in a life-enhancing, God-honoring way, or abused and misused in ways that corrupt its noble purpose. This statement affirms, cautions, and calls for Christian accountability in one of the most powerful forces in cultural life today, which is sport. At first glance, it appears that the title of today very much refers to the individual, the athlete in elite sport who is striving to win a gold medal at the Olympics, a title at tennis tournament, or a World Cup in soccer. But to my understanding, and according to my practical experience, there is more in the title when we consider the question, what sport as a whole can contribute to society, as a whole with the ultimate goal to make the world a better place, giving the best as society to create a post-corona society. And for that reason, we also need to further discuss on a change of paradigm. The image of physical activity and sport for all should correlate with a new understanding of its manifold benefits, not only for the individual, but also for society as such. The message that, of course, is extremely significant and important, sport for all is embedded, of course, in a social context. But this means that it's our responsibility also with all of our opportunities to fight through sport for all and physical activity to make the society, the work, a better place. Sport for All stands out for its inclusiveness, ability to invoke social change, central role in preserving heritage and culture. Sport is a critical piece of the global puzzle. What does this mean for the church in a practical way? What are the specific contributions the church, from my perspective, can pay in this field now, and in particular when it comes to create the post-corona society? The church's commitment has always been the same for centuries, to be a strong partner of sports. Its commitment always has been that sport always remains an experience capable of giving meaning and value to people's life, to be aimed at the integral formation of the person, to improve social conditions, and to building of interpersonal relationships. This is why the pastoral care of sport is fitting in many environments and can be promoted in many different contexts. Let me only name and explain some of the critical environments where there is a fundamental need for the church to support and to announce Christ's message. We have to come up with a concept that brings together all these key stakeholders that are basically the parents, the parishes, schools and universities, sport clubs and associations, media as a bridge, specialized sciences, new places of sport. And I was happy, of course, to find this quote of Pope Francis, where it is saying, it's beautiful when a parish has a sports club and something is missing without. This is a very practical approach, but I have my experience with my own parish, with my biography in church work, which confirms and gives me the understanding that this local work is all important when it comes to build the post-corona societies. We cannot do with a strong contribution and the strong opportunities that the church has can meet with. So we have to talk to the parents. We have to work with the parents. Parents obviously are the first teachers of faith and sport. They are an important source of bonding between a parent and child. But we have to advise how they connect making their kids or themselves active with the values of Christian belief. For example, which was always an issue in my personal life when I was a half professional soccer player, how to find a way to celebrate the sanctity of Sunday to uphold as a holy day. Just very simple to find a way to attend the Sunday Mass. But this is something where the church has to enter into. The parishes to work together with local sport clubs, to find a way to share what is so important for church and Christianity. So it's an important player that we must not forget about. The same is true of schools and universities, which are, of course, ideal places to promote an understanding of sport aimed at education, inclusion, and human promotion. A dialogue between all those stakeholders in shaping school sport. And again, here the church has to enter into. I can continue with sport clubs and associations. Media as a bridge, which is very important, that the church indeed also is making use of its own social media platforms and channels, just to make sure that they can also find a way to communicate and to contact with spectators, but also opinion makers in sport. And of course, it will also give the feeling to the young generation that the church is up to date and connects with the young generation. It's true at the same time with specialized sciences, where also the church should have an influence and insight. New places of sport, which is a very special challenge because this is not in the field of organized sports, but outside. And it's again, a very special challenge because there is a tendency to be practiced in solitarianism, favoring individualism, where there is no educational or social purpose. Coming to an end, short. Building alliances again. We have so many good players, good willing players that could become partners of this concept of bringing all these coalition partners together and fight for the same good aim, which is basically building up the post-corona society in the spirit of Christianity and of the church. And I was very happy to finish with to find a quote of Saint Joseph Maria Escrivá, already from 1972, which in a way gives this double meaning of giving the best of yourself. It's a quote, not completely put into this chart. And again, another failure, and a third failure, and a third failure, and finally, yes, they made it. Well, we, with God's grace, which is the best, the only walking pole as a Christian has, with God's grace, we can leap over anything at all. Thank you very much for your attention, and it's my sincere hope that I was able to at least a little bit help to understand the situation that is ahead of us, which is basically how to fight the corona, but not in a just simple way, but in the light of Christianity and our church that we are so much in love with. Thank you very much for giving me the floor.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Thank you very much. I think that you touch a lot of different issues that I'm sure that many participants will be happy to comment and to question not only to you, but also to Diane and to Father Kelly. I would say that you three mentioned something in common, which is the importance of course, the importance of sport in our lives. And I forgot to mention also when Diane Castillejo was talking about the importance of parents supporting families, and also in the document we talk about the importance of parents, that in my opinion It's something that it's missing in nowadays, and how we can build a stronger families through sports, when parents and children play together alone. So I would like to open the discussion. I remember, I would like to remind that if anyone wants to talk, he or she just need to write on the chat, or raise the hand, or simply, if they prefer not to talk on live, they can write the question, and I will address the question to any of the speakers, or to all of them. So I leave the opportunity, if there's anyone who wants to ask a question, to Father Kelly, to Dian Castillejo, or to Wolfgang Baumann. Now is the opportunity. Yes, so Daniele, let me see.
Yes, thank you, Santiago. I have a question for Diana. In your country, people are living a very strong lockdown, very, very strong. The deprivation, how the deprivation, the absence of sport is changing the society and the behavior of people.
I didn't hear the last part of your question, but you said, how has the lockdown affected the sports life of the people? Is that what you said? Sorry.
The absence of sport is changing the behavior of people. Is
Yeah.
changing society.
Well, yeah. Well, up to today, we're still like in what we call general community quarantine, and there are only a few sports that are actually allowed. And we started our lockdown in March, and it's already October. The first 2 months, absolutely no going out of the house. So, um, I mean, I live in a village where we usually run outside, but we were not able to do that. So there was a big sale in treadmills because a lot of people were having to run inside. And I mean, thank God for other things like skipping rope and doing like some sort of weights. And most people are just doing YouTube workouts, like those who are really into sports. But the general public really, Manila, where we have the most number of COVID cases. We have 30 million people in Manila. The general public are not really allowed to do any sport other than running. And by the way, we are mandated to run with a mask. We have to run with a mask. Golf is allowed with a mask. Cycling, swimming, and tennis, believe it or not. But absolutely no competition. No competition. Like our basketball teams just started practicing, the professional teams, and they're just now going into a sort of like an NBA type of bubble to continue with our professional basketball league. But the regular people, in fact, our national athletes are really suffering because they're not really allowed to train. A lot of our sports venues have been turned into quarantine centers. So I mean, for me as an active person, I really feel like the inability to exercise and to compete has really uh I think it has a big effect on the mental state of people, because basically when you participate in sports, you feel hopeful, you feel strong. So I feel like it has sort of made people a little bit down. And now that we're seeing that the basketball league might start, it has given some excitement to people. And I think the effect of this we will not fully see right now, but I think much later. I think in the months to come, or even in the coming years. So in our country right now, I mean, unlike in Europe where tennis is in full swing, football, basketball, right? Here we don't have any competitions. Like our college sports has all been stopped, canceled, and it might resume next year.
Wow. Just I think that the Philippines is living the longest quarantine situation in the world.
Yeah,
So it's very
that's
challenging.
true.
Yeah. I have a question for. Thank
It
you,
is. It's
Diane.
one.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say right now we have four athletes who have just four athletes who have qualified for the Olympics, and all of them are overseas because
Hmm.
if they stay here they won't be able to train. We have two boxers, and then we have a gymnast, and we have a pole vaulter who's in England. Our gymnast is in Japan.
Mhm.
I wanted to say hello to Mr. Bauman. I wanted to, when Jordan Clarkson was trying to play for the Philippines in the Asian Games, we were awaiting your big decision of whether I think the International Association would allow it, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you remember.
Wolfgang, I have a question. In fact, two questions for you. First one is Jaime Fillol from Chile asks you, what is your experience in your relation with parishes and sport, if you have any?
Yes, I do have actually, and this is due to the fact that I have been working as a volunteer for quite some years in my local parish. And maybe one of the reasons is that, generally speaking, sport has a positive image in my country. I have to say that I have made quite some good experiences. Of course, it very much always depends on the leadership of the parish, of the reverend, the priest, how his relationship to sport is. And this would be another issue to, of course, strengthen also the importance of physical activity and sport in the educational scheme, if I may say, of priests and so on. And there was a quite open feeling and opportunity to interfere and include various types of physical activity projects for senior citizens, for children. We had our own sort of soccer team. And I have to admit, for me in person, it was the start into a sort of half professional soccer career, because through my church, I got in touch with this sport, and then I moved on. So my experiences are rather positive. Of course, it might change a little bit these days because Germany is also lacking from a sufficient number of priests, and they have been now so much focusing on other things that I'm sometimes a little bit worried that they might not put the appropriate focus also on these types of social activities. But my experience, to make a long answer short, is quite, I would even say, very positive.
Thank you, Wolfgang. I have another question for you from my colleague and friend, Monsignor Sanchez de Toca, who is the Undersecretary of the Pontifical Council for Culture. He says, there seems to be more opportunities for sport for all as opposed to professional or elite sport in a post-COVID world. What do you think?
Well, from what I can see right now, even today, I see people, men and women, running, cycling, and so on. The public elite sport life in my country is also still extremely suffering. Of course, we are relatively well, if I can make use of the word well in this context. But my personal understanding and attitude is that the role and reputation and image of sport for all and physical activity will even grow and become more important through this COVID pandemic. I guess there will be more governments than before that are putting stress on this particular field to make people be physical active and sportive. Sometimes I even believe physical activity can be a sort of recipe to fight against Corona and COVID, because of course it makes you move in the outside, in particular if we can, in contrast to the Philippines, I was sorry to hear. But my personal understanding is that the real role and the importance of sport for all will only be recognized now during the pandemic, and also as a tool to reestablish and to normalize again society when hopefully this nightmare is over someday.
Thank you. There's another question for you that asks how can or how does TAFISA could support local churches in on the promotion of sport for all?
Well, this is a good question because it a little bit fits into a conversation that TAFISA and the Vatican have right now. Of course, we have this very dense network of sport organizations in some 170 countries, a huge number of national Olympic committees, ministries, and so on. And what we are planning to do in principle is to launch some centralized, standardized projects that this is the way we normally work, finding out what are the requirements, what are the interests of the various given countries, and then create all together with those that have even a better understanding than we have, like the Vatican, for example, a concept, a program that can be shared with as many countries, municipalities, and so on. The good thing is right now that there is a new trend in the world to identify the setting of a city. We are talking about active city projects to be a center of making people more physical active. And of course, this sort of setting also includes the church life, just as any other player of this community or setting. And I'm personally very open and very interested to altogether develop something that can be for the help and benefit in then also the local or the regional church parishes and so on.
Thank you, Wolfgang. I think Father Kelly wanted to intervene.
Yeah, thank you, Santiago, and thank you, Diane and Wolfgang, for your talks. Your talk, Wolfgang, about participation going down made me think about our own context here in the United States, where that's especially true with young people. And but the context for that is that sport is becoming viewed much more instrumentally. So young people are specializing in one sport early, then the training becomes very serious, and it's viewed in relation to getting ready for college scholarship or for the more ambitious to. So many other kids say it's not fun anymore, that they end up dropping out of it. But I was kind of, so in other words, I mean, an instrumental approach, means to an end, college scholarship or money, so it runs against the play, which is you do it for its own sake, because you enjoy it. And but I was thinking, during your talk, it occurred to me that this may be contributing to our difficulty in the United States with the pandemic, because we are finding it very difficult to engage in a common project where we're all in it together. You know, And this is what Pope Francis said in one of his talks. We're all connected to one another. The pandemic has highlighted this, for better or worse. To emerge from this crisis better than before, we have to do so together, not alone. Not alone because it cannot be done alone. Either it is done together or it is not done. And what I'm thinking about is, if many young people in the United States for 2 decades, 3 decades now, have not had the experience in civil society of playing on teams, learning how to do something together with other people, and now they're young adults, and that perhaps this lack has undermined us in terms of our capacity to deal with the pandemic. You know, the United States is pretty famous in terms of analysis for being individualistic. But the most popular sports here are team sports. But we have kids not playing now as they become so specialized and connected to other things, instrumentalized. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Father Kelly. Sorry.
No, it makes absolute sense to me, but it also sheds light on an issue that fell a little bit short in my presentation, because in a way, if I may say this from the perspective of an active sport person and also a practicing Catholic, in a way, these two systems are like twins, because in both cases, what we have failed for so many years is to indeed activate the parents, the mothers and the fathers. Because once children are entering at school or university, in many cases, it's far too late. It's so obvious, and I still do not understand why no institution, no organization, including my own, has ever started on this issue. Because it is the responsibility, first of all, of parents to educate kids in regards to the religion, in regards to an active lifestyle. Once they are 6, 7, 8 years old, for many, it's too late. And as I also explained, if a kid is unlucky and has been grown up with parents that are not active, they have pretty much a huge opportunity to have the same fate. So I guess we have to start earlier, but I fully understand your point with this team sport issue. Spontaneously, it makes sense to me, yes.
Thank you. If I may say something, I completely agree. Regarding this issue about parents, as I mentioned before, and also I was watching a documentary a few weeks ago about coaches, and this NBA coach named Doc Rivers said that when he was young, he didn't like to say that he was going to practice. He rather preferred to say that he was going to play basketball. I think that there's an issue there, and in my humble opinion, especially in developed countries like the United States or in the UK, where sport is so specialized, then that children from a very young age, they forget that they are playing instead of practicing or training to win or to succeed in a specific sport. So this is something that I think the pandemic has given us an opportunity, a challenge, but also an opportunity to discuss and to, as Wolfgang said in his presentation, to take action, not only to share and support, but in the end, of course, to take action. I don't know if there's anyone who wants to make any question or to comment about this topics we are talking about. Yeah, Father Kelly.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I don't think the play element or enjoyment or loving what you're doing is only relevant for young people either. I think it's also relevant for
Of course.
athletes at the highest level. No, and I have a quote from Phil Jackson, who's the most successful professional coach in the United States in the history of any sport. And he says, basketball is a form of play, of course, but it's easy for players to lose sight of this because of the pressures of the job. As a result, my primary goal during practice is to get the players to reconnect with the intrinsic joy of the game. So, and he articulates this in different ways throughout some of his writings. So I think there's evidence there, you know, that because sport is a human activity, you have to engage the, you know, motivation and the interest and it has to be sustained over time. And so players have to be connected with the love of what it is they're doing. And of course, the best coaches, if we're talking about excellence, the best coaches, the best teachers have a love and a passion for their sport, and they can communicate that to the players.
Thank you, Father Kelly. There's a question addressed to me. Hermie says, is there any plan to push sport as a general direction in the church? Well, I can answer briefly to this question, but I think it will be one of the issues of the last session of our webinar series. And to not avoid the question, I can say that the church already is working towards that direction. I can say that there's a lot of things being done in the past years. We can talk about the First Vatican document on sports. Also, the Pontifical Council for Culture has organized in 2016 a very big international conference together with the International Olympic Committee and United Nations called Sport at the Service of Humanity. But also on a national and local level, there are many different initiatives. I can talk about initiatives from Italy, from United States, from South America, from Argentina, from Chile, also in Africa, in South Africa, in Kenya, of course in Australia. I mean, in all the continents, the church is taking action in this way. But maybe we will have an opportunity to talk more about this on our last webinar session. I'm happy that Linda Del Rio from United States has written a comment here. But I would like to ask you, Linda, if you could share it with us publicly, because I would like to say Linda is married to Jack Del Rio, which is a professional coach, American football coach, and she has a lot of experience in this field, talking about parents and children, also because one of his sons is also a professional American football player. So I'm sorry if I ask you this directly, but I would love to hear you so everybody can hear about what you just wrote to me.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Okay, because I can't hear you, but you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, Santiago, will you read what I wrote? And then I'm going to expand on that, please.
She wrote to me, this brings up my point from last week. The family has become a major element of not only the pro player coach, because they spend much more time with the parents and siblings. This is a relevant factor in moving forward with sport during and after the pandemic. Life as we know it as an athlete and family of coaches and athletes are much more connected and in need of each other like never before. These sharing sessions about the impact of family and sport are a cornerstone of faith, sport, and virtue moving forward.
Okay, so my point being is I think in the recovery of sports and children and athletics on any level first of all, I had 4 kids. 3 of my girls played college. They had scholarships for college volleyball. And then my son Luke was a quarterback for the University of Florida, but he is also a coach in the NFL now too. So Luke is also in DC coaching. So Luke and Jack are both on the same team. But what I'm saying is all of the players, even during camp, never went to camp because of the pandemic. They were with their families. And the children of the coaches and the athletes were a major part of the athletes staying healthy in mind, body, and soul. And the same has happened now because they don't go to the team hotels. They go straight back to their families and they're playing with their kids more. And all of the children are connected as well through sport. Because of the pandemic, we're together a lot more. The mothers share these texts about what they're dealing with. So it's a whole nother way of connecting, but it can be a really great way for us all to move forward with faith on how we do our services. I think I sent Wolfgang a message about how we bring a priest to the team hotel when we can go to hotel to say a private mass for our players that would never get to have mass celebrated because our games are on Sundays. So it's just different ways of finding new elements and new resources and diverse ways of being families together in sport and recovering in this.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I don't know if there's any other question or comment for the speakers today. We are already, sorry.
Can I make a quick comment, Santiago?
Yes, please, Diane.
I mean, I just wanted to say, I have only one child. He's 18 years old, and prior to this, he was in Spain training, trying to improve his level of game. But during this pandemic, I have never had more workout time with my son as I have in the last 6 months. I mean, okay, I used to be a tennis player, but of course he's way better than me now. And I mean, if not for the pandemic, he would never get on the court with me because he would say, Mom, you're too lousy for me already. But because like in the beginning, you're not really allowed to, you're not really allowed to go to a public court. So we were able to find a private court. But who's he gonna play with? So like after 2 months, it was like, okay, Mom, feed me some balls. Like I never thought that I mean, when he was 13, he started beating me already. So it was a really a great time. And I'm gonna remember this pandemic as the time that I spent a lot of physical exercise with my son that I don't think would have happened in a normal situation. And I mean, I really really feel and totally agree with you that the parents have such a key role in this. And it's such a good way to uplift the spirit and the aura in the house, in the home, just to give some energy to the house. You all go like for a 2 kilometer or 5 kilometer run together. You come back and everyone's energized and a little bit more upbeat about things. As you all know, being athletes, sports just has this way of lifting you up. And just like small goals like that really does a lot to keep the spirit up, which we all need to do during this pandemic. I also failed to mention earlier in my talk that I feel like that's engaging in sports and exercise is one of the most spiritual things that we can do. I have, in my own experience, I don't know if you find this true in your case, is that I have my most intimate times with God when I'm either running or swimming or biking or just playing tennis. It's so weird, but it seems like God speaks to me when I'm doing my sport. When I'm running, I get so many thoughts from God. Or when I'm swimming underwater, I'm praying for people or praying for situations, and I get so many ideas. I mean, and I take it as I feel so connected to God when I'm doing my sport. So I really feel there's gonna be a lot of sports in heaven. So it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yes, I totally agree, and it happens to me as well that I need to play sports to clear my mind, and after or during sports, um, suddenly came to your mind situation, experiences, ideas that otherwise wouldn't have come. Jaime Fillol, which is a former professional tennis player, wants to tell you, Diane, that it happened the same to him with his children and grandchildren. He had the opportunity to play with them and to be more time with them at the tennis court because of the pandemic. So I guess that first of all, we are blessed that we could experience these situations, but also we could say that the pandemic has brought also positive issues in our lives.
Yeah, so Santiago, I think this is a huge conversation moving forward because it's one of the great feel good. Like I think it sparks something in everyone when you think back of what you did this last year. It's a highlight. Like I owned a ballet studio, and so three daughters and a son. I talked my son into taking dance classes on YouTube with me. That would have never happened. And I beat him in pickleball. I never played pickleball in my life. I only beat him in one game, but I have those bragging rights of one game of pickleball, which is nothing. So that's fun. I'm so happy that everybody did that as well.
Thank you, Linda, for sharing this also. I would like to finish this session. If there's no more questions or comments, thanking all of you, but particularly Father Kelly from the United States, Dian Castillejo from the Philippines, and Wolfgang from Germany for your presence, for accepting our invitation to take part in this session. I would like to ask Simone to show us our next session on the screen, which will be next week, same time, October 15th on Thursday, and we will talk about inclusive sport, an opportunity not to be missed. And we will have Cristina Gangemi, the director of the Kairos Forum from the United Kingdom, Alessandra Morelli, who is the United Nations Commissioner for Refugees representative in Niger in Africa, and Timothy Shriver, the president of Special Olympics, he will be with us as well. So I encourage you to write on your calendar this session, because will be very interesting. I hope that you all enjoy this session. I hope that you all be safe and stay safe. And as I said last week, see you next Thursday, same time, same channel. Don't miss it. Thank you very much, and see you next week. Bye.
Thank you. God bless.